the shores of Gallipoli to the trenches far away, young Australians stood together, fighting brave another day. For the Southern Cross they carried in their hearts through fire and rain. The Anzac legend born in battle, their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Remember them, the brave ones who fell. Remember them, their stories to tell. Left their homes and all they knew for a war on distant ground. Just farm boys and city lads, now in khaki uniforms bound. Letters home spoke of courage, though fear filled every night. A ship forged in darkest hours as they faced the morning light. They were just like you and me, ordinary souls caught in history. Their legacy lives on today in the land down under so far away. From the shores of Gallipoli to the trenches far away, young Australians stood together, fighting brave another day. For the Southern Cross they carried in their hearts through fire and rain. The Anzac legend born in battle, their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Remember them, the brave ones who fell. Remember them, their stories to tell.
Amidst the looming threat of war, Aliyah, Prime Minister Joseph Cook and opposition leader Andrew Fisher delivered powerful messages of national unity on July 31st, 1914. Cook, speaking at an election meeting in Horsham, Victoria, emphasized Australia's commitment to the empire. Remember that when the empire is at war, so is Australia at war. All our resources in Australia are in the empire and for the empire and for the preservation and security of the empire. Fisher, in Colac, Victoria, countered with a pledge of total Australian support, promising to defend the empire to our last man and our last shilling, demonstrating a rare moment of bipartisan agreement. In a time of crisis, the young nation's existing military was primarily a militia, with regular forces largely dedicated to coastal defense. The Defense Act of 1903, which prohibited conscripts from serving overseas, necessitated the creation of an entirely volunteer force, the Australian Imperial Force, AIF. Conceived by Bridges and White, the AIF initially comprised the 1st Infantry Division and the 1st Light Horse Brigade. The 1st Division included 3 infantry brigades led by McLaurin, Mackay, and Sinclair McLagan, while Chauvel commanded the Light Horse and Hobbs the divisional artillery. Early AIF recruits faced rigorous selection standards with a high rejection rate due to strict medical and physical criteria. However, these standards were later relaxed as the war demanded replacements. Despite the initial enthusiasm, the AIF suffered heavy losses. Of the original 32,000, only 7,000 survived the war. The rapid influx of volunteers led to the formation of additional brigades, including the 4th Infantry Brigade under John Monash. The AIF expanded significantly, eventually fielding 5 infantry divisions, 2 mounted divisions, and other supporting units. A partially formed 6th Division was disbanded in 1917 to reinforce the existing divisions after heavy losses.
Hello all, and welcome to the Outback Sisters.
I'm Denise.
And I'm Lisa. Today we look at the involvement of Australians in World War I. Their participation stands on a pivotal moment in their young nation's history, shaping its identity and leaving a profound legacy. From enthusiastic enlistments to the harsh realities of trench warfare, Australia has contributions, I will eventually get around the word, was significant and deeply impactful.
At the outbreak of World War I in 1914, Australia was a relatively young territory within the British Empire, and it responded with an almost immediate and unwavering commitment. This wasn't merely a formal declaration, but a deeply felt surge of national sentiment. Several factors contributed to this rapid mobilisation. Imperial loyalty played a significant role as Australia, through self-governing, maintained a very strong tie with Britain. The monarchy was revered throughout the country, and there was a sense of shared heritage and cultural affinity. The idea of the mother country being in peril resonated deeply.
Many Australians also felt a strong sense of duty to defend the empire and uphold its values, reinforced by widespread propaganda emphasising the threat posed by Germany and the importance of preserving British civilization. Furthermore,
But go on.
Australia, having federated only in 1901, was still in the process of forging its national identity. Participation in a major world event presented an opportunity to demonstrate its strength and commitment on the global, not the golden stage. Sorry, shouldn't laugh at it easily, but golden stage, on the global stage, a chance to prove itself.
The initial perception of the war was often romanticised, with many young men seeing it as an adventure, a chance to escape the routine of everyday life and experience the world. There was a widespread belief that the war would be short and decisive, adding to the allure of enlistment. At the time, the Australian political landscape was largely unified in its support for the war effort, with both the ruling Labor Party and the opposition Liberal Party committed to backing Britain. This political consensus facilitated a swift and decisive response.
Finally, significant social pressure to enlist existed. Men who refused to volunteer were sometimes viewed with suspicion or even ostracised. This pressure, combined with other factors, contributed to the high levels of enlistment in the early stages of the war. Therefore, obviously, Australia's readily pledged support was not simply a bureaucratic formality, but a complex expression of imperial loyalty, national aspiration, and a sense of adventure, all wrapped up in the social and political climate of the time. This initial rush of enthusiasm would, however, be tempered by the harsh realities of war in the years to come.
Talk about being thrown in at the deep end. The Australian troops found themselves in the Dardanelles campaign, which was known as the Gallipoli campaign of 1915, and we have done a separate video on the Gallipoli campaign. This encounter occupies, so if I can figure out how to put it in the comments, I might try and do that.
Yeah.
It occupies a unique and profoundly significant place within the Australian national consciousness, acting as a crucible in which the nation's identity was forged. The decision to participate in the Dardanelles campaign, which was aimed at securing a sea route to Russia, led to the now legendary landing at Anzac Cove on the 25th of April 1915. This date marks the Australian Imperial Forces' inaugural major combat experience, a baptism of fire that would shape the nation's perception of war and sacrifice. The initial landing was chaotic and fraught with difficulties as the troops found themselves facing steep cliffs and determined Ottoman resistance.
The harsh realities of trench warfare, coupled with the challenging terrain and relentless Ottoman defence, resulted in heavy casualties in the Australian Imperial Force. In early 1916, recognising the futility of further engagement, the Allies orchestrated a meticulously planned and secretive evacuation, withdrawing their forces from the peninsula. They must have got that bit right. The Gallipoli campaign therefore became a potent symbol of not only the brutality and futility of war, but also of strategic miscalculations and logistical shortcomings.
Over the course of the campaign, 8,709 Australians died out of the approximately 200,000 Allied soldiers that perished. This is a staggering loss of life and underscores the brutal realities of modern warfare. This immense human cost was compounded by the harsh conditions endured by the troops, including extreme temperatures, disease, and the constant threat of enemy fire. Despite months of restless fighting and repeated offences, the Allies failed to achieve their strategic objectives. They were unable to break through the Ottoman defences and secure control of the Dardanelles.
The strategic failure of this campaign had far-reaching consequences. It left Russia isolated and unsupported in its struggle against the Central Powers. This isolation contributed significantly to the instability that would eventually lead to the Russian Revolution.
The campaign's legacy served as a stark reminder of the human cost of military ambition and the importance of thorough planning and execution in large-scale operations. The enduring image of Gallipoli, etched into the collective memory of the participating nations, remains a somber testament to the sacrifices made and the lessons learned in the crucible of war.
Despite the strategic failure of the campaign, which ultimately resulted in a costly evacuation, the bravery and resilience displayed by the Australians and New Zealand soldiers became the cornerstone of the Anzac legend. This legend, encompassing values of courage, mateship, and endurance, has evolved into a defining element of Australian identity, celebrated annually on Anzac Day. The Gallipoli campaign therefore surpassed its military outcome, becoming a symbol of national spirit and a testament to the enduring qualities of the Australian soldier. The casualty lists published in newspapers brought a grim reality of war into every Australian household, fostering a sense of shared grief and solidifying the campaign's place in the national narrative.
Keep going.
Oh, okay, yeah. After the hard-won lessons and eventual evacuation of Gallipoli, the Australian Imperial Force was redeployed to the Western Front in 1916, where they would face the grim reality of an industrialised warfare in France and Belgium. Here, Australian troops were thrust into the heart of the conflict, enduring the brutal conditions of trench warfare, a landscape characterised by mud, barbed wire, and relentless artillery bombardment. They participated in some of the war's most devastating battles.
The Battle of Fromelles was fought on July 19 and 20th, 1916. It was a disastrous debut for the Australian Imperial Forces on the Western Front. Intended as a diversion for the Battle of Somme, the attack was poorly planned and executed. The Australian 5th Division, alongside the British 61st Division, faced heavily fortified German positions with inadequate artillery support. The attack resulted in catastrophic losses, with over 5,500 Australian casualties in a single night, which included nearly 2,000 deaths. This represented one of the highest casual rates for a single division in 24 hours during the entire war. The Australians were forced to advance across open ground, exposed to relentless machine gun fire, and the waterlogged terrain offered little cover. The results were minimal territorial gains and exceptionally high casualties.
During the Battle of the Somme 1916, Australian troops found themselves involved in intense and brutal combat known as the struggle for Pozières. Pozières, I think I'm saying it right, but anyway, was a strategically it'll do for now. Strategically vital village, and it became the focal point of fierce fighting, with the AIF tasked with capturing and holding heavily defended German positions. The fighting was characterised by relentless artillery bombardments, savage close-quarter combat, and a landscape utterly devastated by war. Australian divisions included the 1st, 2nd and 4th were rotated through the battle, which endured immense strain and suffered heavy losses. The Australians faced constant German counterattacks and endured some of the most intense artillery shelling in the entire war. The village was reduced to rubble, and the surrounding fields became a landscape of shell progress and death. Progress was measured in the small increments, with each metre gained at a tremendous cost in lives. The battle resulted in approximately 23,000 Australian casualties, surpassing even those suffered in Gallipoli. Charleston described the location as being more densely sown with Australian sacrifice than any other place on earth. Pozieres was another example of the brutal reality of the Western Front, highlighting the devastating impact of industrialised warfare. The battle solidified the reputation of Australian soldiers for their courage and tenacity, but at a terrible price. The memory of Pozieres continues to be honoured, serving as a reminder of the sacrifices made by Australian troops in World War One.
The Third Battle of Ypres, or
Yep.
Passchendaele, in
Yep.
1917.
Yep.
Subjected Australian forces to a grueling and harrowing ordeal marked by unimaginable conditions and immense suffering. The battle unfolded in the Ypres salient, a low-lying area already scarred by previous fighting. A lot of rainfall transformed the battlefield into a vast muddy quagmire, hindering soldiers' movements through deep, clinging mud. Unprecedented was the word I was trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah. Relentless artillery bombardments further devastated the terrain, creating a landscape of flooded shell holes and treacherous mud. Australian divisions, including 3rd, 4th, and 5th, were committed to the battle during the later stages, when conditions were at their worst. They participated in a series of bloody attacks, facing determined German resistance and the brutal battlefield environment. The fighting was characterised by close quarters combat, often in waist-deep mud, with soldiers constantly threatened by drowning or being buried alive. The extreme conditions made it difficult for soldiers to maintain their footing, and equipment became useless, clogged with mud. Casualties were high, not only from the enemy fire, but also from exposure, disease, and drowning, with the total casualties around 38,000.
How disgusting. What a horrible, horrible, horrible
It's a
thing
description. I
to
have
do.
seen movies that show, I mean, because modern day movies can really show it, but it just, yeah, you're just like like clawing your way up in a mud hole and they'd slide back and then it'd be terrible. Yeah, yes. Drowning would be,
Horrifying.
I know the idea of
War
drowning.
itself is bad, but just to imagine those
Yeah,
circumstances is horrible.
yeah,
The Australian experience at Passchendaele demonstrated the extreme horrors of trench warfare, as we were just discussing,
yeah,
symbolising how futile and brutal war is.
exactly.
The memory of this serves as a poignant reminder of the sacrifices made by these Australian soldiers and the enduring impact of the war. The visual image of soldiers wading through mud has become a very strong image in the Australian memory of World War One.
And how we just mentioned it, that, you know, it is. Right.
Yeah.
So each of these battles left a deep scar in the Australian psyche. The fighting on the Western Front was defined by its static nature, with both sides entrenched in a prolonged stalemate, resulting in immense losses for minimal territory gain. The nature of this fighting was a stark contrast to the more mobile campaigns of the earlier wars, and the sheer scale of the casualties was unprecedented. Despite the horrific conditions, the Australian fighting performance on the Western Front was constantly regarded as exceptional, with their tenacity and courage earning them the reputation as formidable soldiers.
Consequently, they were frequently deployed as shock troops in key offensives, most notably during the Allied offensives of 1918, where their aggressive tactics proved crucial in pushing back the German lines. Amongst the many battle forts, the Battle of Villers-Bretonneux holds a particularly significant place in Australian military history. In April 1918, during the German Spring Offensive, the AIF played a pivotal role in recapturing the town, effectively halting the German advance towards Amiens, a critical railway junction. This decisive action not only prevented a potential breakthrough, but also demonstrated the AIF's crucial contribution to the Allied war effort, once again solidifying their legacy on the Western Front.
In the Middle Eastern theatre of World War One, Australian light horse units distinguished themselves through their crucial contribution to the campaigns in the Sinai and Palestine regions. These mounted troops, uniquely adapted to the harsh desert environment, played a vital role in defending the strategic Suez Canal, a critical artery for British imperial communications and supply lines. Initially, their efforts focused on repelling German. Hang on, just lost my spot. Sorry. What was I up to?
Their efforts focused on repelling Ottoman incursions.
Aimed at disrupting this vital waterway. Sorry, everyone. Subsequently, the light horse units participated in the Allied advance into Palestine, a campaign marked by challenging terrain and fierce resistance. Their involvement extended to pivotal moments, including the daring and successful charge of Beersheba in October 1917, a decisive action that broke the Ottoman defensive line and paved the way for the capture of Jerusalem in December of the same year. The capture held symbolic and strategic importance, boosting Allied morale and demonstrating the effectiveness of their campaign.
Throughout these campaigns, the Australian light horse units consistently showcased their exceptional skills and adaptability as mounted troops. Their ability to navigate the arid landscape, conduct reconnaissance, and execute swift cavalry charges proved invaluable in achieving strategic objectives. The unique skills of the Australian soldiers, many of whom were experienced bushmen and stockmen, allowed them to excel in the desert environment, highlighting the distinctive qualities of the Australian soldier in the theatre of war, far removed from the trenches of the Western Front. World War I inflicted a profound and lasting impact on Australian society, and it left deep emotional and demographic scars due to the immense loss of young men. The casualty figures disproportionately affected a relatively small population, permeating every facet of Australian life and leaving communities bereft and families shattered. This period of national grief acted as a catalyst for the development of a distinct national identity, increasingly separate from the previously dominant British identity. The shared experiences of the soldiers, particularly the hardships endured at Gallipoli and on the Western Front, fostered a sense of national unity and a growing awareness of Australia's unique place in the world. The Anzac legend, born from the actions of Australia and New Zealand soldiers at Gallipoli, evolved into a powerful and enduring symbol of Australian courage, mateship, and sacrifice. This legend, emphasising qualities of resilience and endurance, became deeply ingrained in the national psyche, shaping how the Australians perceived themselves and their role in the world.
War also had significant political and social consequences, sparking heated debates over conscription, which divided the nation along class and religious lines. These debates, along with the growing sense of national pride, contributed to the rise of Australian nationalism, fostering a desire for greater autonomy and self-determination.
Australia's involvement in this war was transformative and a defining experience, and it fundamentally has changed the nation's history and its identity. These sacrifices made by these soldiers, both on the battlefield and at home, continue to be remembered and honoured through commemorations and memorials, ensuring that the legacy of the war remains an integral and enduring part of our story.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. We hope that you enjoyed our look at how the small and young nation of Australia has always been willing to show its commitment to the Allied cause very early.
At least
That's
until now, but who knows what the future holds.
yes, of course, modern day we have a few things going on, and yeah, we don't know what's going to happen from there.
No.
I was just noting that we had been talking about the light horse. And if I'm just going to mention a website, it's lighthorse.org.au, and there's some really beautiful poetry and songs written by people that were there at the time, I believe. So, anyway, just thought I'd
Oh,
note
you
it.
know, always give that a look in. I mean, there's lots of
Yeah,
websites about
yeah,
the Anzacs, the wars, and stuff like that.
yeah.
If you want
I
to
mean,
have
if
a
you're
look at
really
them.
interested, yeah, look at the movie too. Gallipoli with Mel Gibson. It's an older movie, but it was a really good movie about warfare. It's made in the 70s, I think. That'd be about right. 70s,
Yeah, be about
80s.
right. I think maybe
Yeah.
the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
of
it was
course,
yeah.
I could do no more but recommend going to the War Memorial, which
Yeah.
I consider an absolutely amazing place to visit and visit not as often as I like, I guess, because I don't go there very often. It's too far to
Yeah.
go.
Well, that's right, because we don't live near Canberra, and the war memorials near us are only yeah, mostly for the local people, which has its own place, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, if you're from overseas, you might not be able to get to one either. But
Well,
go to your own
I
war
would
memorials.
I would guess that every country has its own memorial to the fallen in the
Yeah.
wars of some
I don't-
description.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're in Europe, you can actually go to the Dardanelles War, where there are Australians being laid to rest there.
Mm.
Um, yeah, there's a few different Gallipoli still. I think they still have a few around the. I'm not sure if you're allowed to visit. I think you can, but yeah,
I
it's a
don't know. I mean, it's a
yeah,
place I've always wanted to go, but I don't think I'm ever going to get there.
it's a long
But
way.
it's a long
Yeah,
way.
so yeah, it's always worth also. You can look at these sites that have the war memorials, and you can see them without having to travel, which is can be easier at this time in the world, with all the problems we've all got.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Alrighty. So thank you
All
very
right.
much for joining us, and thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Denise.
And I'll
Don't
see you
forget,
next time, Lisa.
yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'd love
Yep.
to see some comments.
Yeah. And we'll see you all next time.
All
Bye
right,
for
catch you later.
now.
Bye.